My goal tonight is to give you a good understanding and a solid foundation for growing berries in the home garden. We're going to cover a wide variety of topics this evening: the unique characteristics of berries, the importance of chill hours, the various and unique fruiting habits of the different berries, pollination and pruning for fruit production. And we're going to cover some of the basic growing fundamentals when it comes to berries: sun, soil, water, mulch, and feeding. We're going to cover a lot of information tonight. I want you to sit back and relax and just take in the big picture. Anna shared with you that we will post this webinar on YouTube, so you can rewatch this webinar if you need to. When I was preparing this webinar this afternoon and running through it, I realized that I had 2 stray cherries in my berry photo. They're just wannabes, I think. So we're just going to go with it, and let's begin our deep dive into growing bountiful berries. Okay. We're going to open tonight with berries, and you need to know that berries are not straightforward. There are different types of berries. There are, but not all of them are suitable for Contra Costa County. Blueberries, only 2 are going to be usable for Contra Costa County and the zones 9 and 10. Those are going to be your southern high bush and your rabbit eye. When it comes to strawberries, there are 3 types of strawberries, but really only 2 that are suitable for zones 9 and 10. That is going to be your June-bearing strawberries and your ever-bearing strawberries. The exception is going to be your day-neutral strawberries. Day-neutral strawberries are temperature dependent. The temperature needs to be between 35 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit for day-neutral strawberries to fruit. This would not be suitable for our inland summers, where our temperatures can get well over 90 to 100 degrees for days on end. But they might be actually a good choice for some of our cooler coastal areas. When we talk about berries, we can't talk about berries without talking about some trellising. So I want to define trellis for you. A trellis is a structure or framework designed to support climbing or trailing plants in an upright manner. While blueberries don't specifically need any trellising, you're going to find as they mature that they're a very large bush, and the tips of their fruiting branches can sometimes get extremely heavy. So while you don't need to trellis them, you might need to support or prop the branches. Strawberries grow on very low crowns, and they will not need any trellising at all. When it comes to types of berries, and in the caneberry family, these are blackberries and raspberries. I want to define canes for you. Canes are simply long, slender, single stems. Very often, small lateral branches will form off the sides of the canes. For blackberries, there are 3 types of blackberries. There's the erect, the semi-erect, and trailing. But trailing blackberries are not recommended for home gardeners. Raspberries have fall-bearing, June-bearing, and ever-bearing, and trellising is recommended for these berries. Historically, caneberries have all had thorns, but there are many thornless varieties being developed. This is especially true in the blackberry family, and many of these new thornless berries are available for the home gardener. In my experience, thornless berries are much easier to care for, and they are certainly easier to harvest. But I've also found that they are just a bit less vigorous than the thorned berry varieties. While trellising for blackberries and raspberries is not technically necessary, most of these berries have very erect canes, which are capable of standing alone. We do recommend support for blackberries and raspberries. They can get the fruiting on the canes can get very heavy, and the growth can get very vigorous. And trellising will help you with both of those issues. Well, we can't talk about berries without talking about chill hours and understanding chill hours. Chill hours are vital for fruit and nut trees, and berries are no exception. I want to define what chill hours are for you. Chill hours are the accumulated number of hours between 32 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit that are required for a plant to break dormancy. Now, the one thing that has to happen is these chill hours, these acquired chill hours, must happen when the plant is dormant. To grow berries, you're going to need to know two things. You're going to need to know the average chill hours for your specific location, and you're going to have to know the chill hour requirements for the berry variety that you're growing. So why are chill hours important? Well, they're important because without the right amount of chill hours to break dormancy, the plant is going to have a domino effect. The buds will be late or they'll fail altogether. The leaves will suffer delayed development. The bloom period can be extended, resulting in little or no fruit set. And the plants just generally are more vulnerable to pests and disease. So let's talk about chill hours by variety. You can see from this slide that they're kind of all over the place, from low chill hours in the 200s to very high chill hours in the 1700 range. This chart is in the handout, so you can pick it up when you get the handout. When you're choosing blueberries, you're going to have to choose very wisely based on your specific chill hours. But there are a few low chill hour blueberries that grow very successfully in areas that don't get a lot of winter chill. Those blueberries are Sunshine, Bountiful Blue, Emerald, Jewel, Misty, and Jubilee. Strawberries just generally have very low chill hours, and they're suitable for most locations in Contra Costa County. Blackberries have kind of medium chill hours, and they are suitable for some areas in Contra Costa County. If you happen to live in a very low chill hour area in the county, there are some alternate berries that you can grow. These berries are Marion berries, Logan berries, and boysenberries. These all are very similar to blackberries and all require very low chill hours. Raspberries, you can see, need a lot of chill hours. But the industry is developing some low chill hour varieties in the raspberry family. And this is a great news for people who would love to grow raspberries, but simply don't get the chill hours. Those low chill hour berries are Emerald Carpet, Heritage, Mysore, Kokanee, and Baba Red. The Kokanee and Baba Red raspberries actually require 0 chill hours. So as I said, this is great news for those of us that like to grow raspberries. If you do attempt to grow raspberries, you're going to have to do your research. So how do you figure out what your chill hours actually are? Well, there is a wonderful station. It's called CIMMYS. This is the California Irrigation Management Information System. Quite a mouthful. But CIMMYS stations track California chill hours, which are vital for our agricultural crops in California. CIMMYS has 5 stations that cover Contra Costa County. You'll see that Pleasanton is listed here. That's actually in Alameda County, but it is on the southern border of Contra Costa. The Pleasanton station happens to be my station. So you will select a station that's closest to you. I want you to just take a quick look at underneath the picture. I have listed the UC Fruit and Nut Research Information Center. They have a chill hour accumulation model. It is extremely easy to use, and you will find no difficulty looking up your chill hours uh, when you use that link. That is also in the handout, so don't worry about capturing that link. Berries fruit at different times of the year. So let's talk about the fruiting habits of berries. They can fruit from very late spring and early summer all the way through fall. Some berries have one fruiting period a year. Other berries have two. And there are still other varieties of berries that will fruit consistently all season. The fruiting habits are going to depend on the variety of the berry that you select. You will research your berries and find the berry that fits your specific needs. To ensure vigorous growth and future fruiting, berries are going to require some pinching back and sometimes pruning. I especially want you to look at the slide for the column for blueberries. Blueberries are quite unique in this way. You really have to be committed to blueberries, for waiting for your blueberries. The first year you put your blueberries in, you are going to remove all of the blossoms from your blueberries. The second year, you're going to remove about 75% of the blossoms. I know this is a hard step, but if you will take this step, you will be richly rewarded. Strawberries are a little bit different as well. June berries are only going to bloom one time and then they're done. So you're going to want to, when you first plant your blueberry or your strawberry patch, you're going to want to take all of the blooms off your strawberry plants in the first year. Everbearing strawberries are a little bit different. You will pinch all of the blooms off those berries for about a month, and then you will let them bloom in July. Removing the blooms promotes the growth of a strong plant and a very vigorous root system. So as hard a step as it is to take, it is well worth the effort. Blackberries and raspberries are both considered caneberries. And when we move into caneberries, it gets a little more complicated. You're going to have a really good working understanding of primocanes and floricanes. Without this understanding, you might very likely prune out your fruiting canes. These are not two different canes. Primocanes and floricanes are the same cane, but with a different name. It's kind of like describing a newborn and a toddler. It's the same child, but at a different stage in development. So our primocanes are the equivalent of our newborns, and our floricanes are the equivalent of our toddlers. The primocanes are 1-year canes, and the floricanes are 2-year-old canes. Most blackberries fruit one time on second-year canes. Those are our floricanes, our toddler canes. There is a new exception on the market. This is a blackberry that's been developed at the University of Arkansas. There are 3 varieties that they've developed now. They're called Prime Arc varieties. There's the Traveler, the Freedom, and the Prime Arc 45. These fruit in June on the floricanes, which are the toddler canes, and then they fruit again in July on the primocanes, which are the newborn canes. When it comes to raspberries, all bets are off. Raspberries are even more complicated. If you're going to attempt to grow raspberries, you're going to really have to do your research. Let's talk about spacing berries. Site selection is going to be an extremely important event. when you and consideration, because when you put in a berry patch, you're making a long-term investment, not to mention the investment you're going to make in plant. So you want to plan right, and you want to plan for the mature size of your berries. Blueberry bushes can get really big. They can get tall and they can get wide. A strawberry bed is going to need room for runners to take root. And blackberries and raspberries can get just plain wild. You want to space your berries for easy maintenance and really good air circulation. Now, just for the fun of it, I ran across this information on the plants per person. And I put it in just because it was interesting to me. It said that it was based on moderate use, but I couldn't find anywhere where they defined what moderate use was. And what we know is at the end of the day, you will simply plant based on the space that you have available. Let's look at how to space your caneberries. You're going to space your caneberries further apart rather than closer together. You will always want to err on the side of more space. Blackberries and raspberries can get absolutely wild and incredibly thick. Blackberries also have very vigorous runners, and they can put out a runner yards and yards away from the mother canes. You'll want to space, particularly your caneberries, for pruning and harvesting. If you have planted a variety of caneberry that has thorns, if you're not spaced well, you're going to look like you've been in a cat fight when you get ready to harvest and prune. You're going to want to plant your berries in the spring when the soil temperature reaches between 45 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And you'll want to take that temperature first thing in the morning. The one thing that berries really have no tolerance for is cold, wet soil. Now, just as a quick aside, I took the temperature on my soil this morning, and it is right at 45 degrees. So here in San Ramon, we have reached a temperature where it would be okay to put our berries in the ground. So we're going now into maintenance, a lot of maintenance issues and the fundamentals of growing berries. So any of you who have been to the Master Gardener webinars before have seen this slide. It's just kind of our number one slide. We always show it because it is such an important part of all of the things we grow. So this evening, we're going to talk about the sun and the soil, the watering and the mulch, pollination needs, feeding and pruning and maintenance for berries. Let's start with the foundation of sun. It seems pretty elementary, but often when you go to the nursery and purchase a plant, you look at the tag and it will say something like full sun or part shade. So let's just go ahead and have a refresher and define what those all mean. So full sun is more than 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. Part sun is 4 to 6 hours of sun per day, including some afternoon sun. And part shade is 4 to 6 hours of sun per day, mostly before midday or noon. All berries actually thrive in full sun. They just love full sun. I want to call your attention to the photo on the bottom of this slide. This is a blackberry, and this is a condition called whiting. The portion of the berry that is exposed to the sun turns white. This is a condition that affects both blackberries and raspberries. And you're going to have to provide some shade when the sun is intense if you're going to avoid your berries suffering from whiting. So now take a quick look at that top photo. This is a section of shade cloth, and this is going to be the tool you use to protect your berries from whiting. So, shade cloth is a woven or a knit fabric that blocks out the sun. It's sold in sheets or in rolls. It's also sold by percentages from 30% to 90%. And the percentage rating refers to how much sun is blocked. So 30% shade cloth blocks 30% of the sun, but allows 70% of the sun to come through. I have very good success with 30% shade cloth on my blackberries when it comes to preventing them from this condition called whiting. I also prefer the knit shade cloth because when you cut it to size, you will get much less raveling. And just an aside, shade cloth is a wonderful tool to use for your peppers and tomatoes as well. When the temperature goes above 85 degrees, tomatoes and peppers really benefit from having some shade on them. Let's look at the foundation of soil. We can't talk about berries without talking about pH. So let me define pH for you. pH is a scale expressing the acidity or alkalinity of a solution. In our case, we're going to be talking about soil. 7 is neutral on the pH scale. Soil pH is absolutely critical for berries. You're making a long-term investment, so you're going to want to start right. Blackberries, raspberries, and strawberries, you can see from the chart, perform best between 5.5 and 6.5 pH. When it comes to blueberries, this is not true. Blueberries need a much more acid soil. Conventional wisdom says that the soil needs a pH of 4.5 to 5.5. But I have found with my personal um, work with blueberries that really the soil needs to be at 4.5 to 5. You will get much better fruiting if you can keep your pH really low for your blueberries. You'll want to begin with a soil test if you're going to set up a berry patch. And based on that soil test, you're going to amend your soil so that you have balanced nutrients and you are working toward getting your pH in the right range for the berry that you're growing. Moving pH in soil is quite a slow process. So you're going to begin and then you're going to keep it up. I amend my blueberry patch with sulfur every spring, and I sometimes amend with sulfur again in the fall. There are two products that you're going to be using if you're going to amend to lower your pH. The first product is elemental sulfur. It's a slower product, but it's a much safer product. The second product that you might use would be ammonium sulfate. This is a faster product, but it has a tendency to burn plants and it can leach into the water table. So as master gardeners, we would encourage you to use elemental sulfur. Sometimes it works very well because the soil needs to be kept so acid for blueberries. It can be nice to plant your blueberries in designated raised beds or containers. In that case, you would want to start with the purchase of an acid soil, a soil designed for acid-loving plants, things like rhododendrons and azaleas, and then add additional sulfur if you need to. We planted our initial blueberries in half wine barrels. We put in 4 blueberries. And after about 7 years, those wine barrels were decaying. So we just built a raised bed right around the 4 wine barrels, broke the wine barrels off the root balls, and then just backfilled with acid soil amended with sulfur. And our blueberries flourished, and they didn't back up, and they didn't go dormant at all. So it was a really good process that we used. Let's look at the foundation of water and mulch. Blueberries need very consistent water. They are very shallow rooted plant and their roots can overheat very quickly. Strawberries need consistent water, but they hate for their roots to be wet. And so you often see as you go by a strawberry field that they will be planted on hills or mounds. And you should also plan on planting your strawberries on hills or mounds as well to keep their roots fairly dry. There are two times in the life of a berry where you really need to pay attention to your water, and that is when they're flowering and when they're fruiting. They will need very consistent water. Now, I may be getting myself into some real hot water here, no pun intended. But very often, when you're reading about watering, you will see a statement that says something like, "You need to water 1 inch of water every 7 to 10 days." Well, who in the heck knows what 1 inch of water is? So I'm a person that really likes to have a visual and I like a hands-on experiment. So I went through all of my baking supplies and pans and I came up with a 12 by 12-inch pan. And a 12 by 12-inch pan is exactly 1 square foot. I filled that pan with 1 inch of water and then I measured the water. And it turns out that it was a half a gallon, which actually surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be that much water. So, how you convert that and use that in your home garden is that you would measure how many square feet you needed to water, and you would use a half a gallon of water for each square foot. There's another fairly easy reference. Um, if you took a 5 gallon bucket of water and you distributed that water over a 3 foot by 3 foot square area, that would be the equivalent of 1 inch of water. So when you see that now in your reading, I hope you have a better idea of just how much an inch of water is. Now, my cheater for this is a little device. I want you to look at that top photo. This is called a flow meter. It attaches to your hose at the back end of the flow meter, and then at the front end of the flow meter, it attaches to whatever device you're watering your garden with. And it measures the amount of water in gallons that you are applying to your beds. This is just a great tool to have in your arsenal. They're not very expensive, and I've had very good luck with mine. The two little orange dots or yellow dots on the flow meter are the way you reset the flow meter if you want to reset it bed by bed. I happen to grow in raised beds, so I reset it for every bed. The one thing I want to remind you about is when it comes to water, is that water is not a set it and forget it situation. You're always going to water with wisdom according to what the plant needs and the weather conditions. When it comes to mulch, all I can say is yes. Mulch, mulch, mulch. Now, blueberries are going to want a little bit thicker mulch in the 3 to 4 inch range because they are so shallow rooted. And strawberries are going to appreciate actually having straw as a mulch under them. The straw helps to promote air circulation in strawberries. Uh, Blackberries and raspberries will do fine with 2 or 3 inches of mulch. Let's look at the foundation of fertility and pollination. All berries are self-fertile with one exception. Rabbit eye blueberries are that exception. If you want to grow rabbit eye blueberries, you are going to have a cross pollinator. And while all berries are self-pollinating, all berries will yield much higher fruit if they have a cross pollinator. A cross pollinator needs to be a plant like a blueberry of a different variety and it must be in bloom at the same time. So as you select your plants, you're going to have to do your research and make sure that you have 2 or 3 different varieties of the same berry that come into bloom at the same time. Bees are just a wonderful pollinator for gardens. And we want to encourage you to plant plenty of flowers to draw in the pollinators. You're going to want to have varieties blooming from early in early in the summer through midsummer and then through late season. Some of my favorite early blooming pollinating plants are alyssum. That's my #1 favorite. It blooms early and it blooms long. Amsonia is another good early bloomer, along with bee balm and coreopsis. The mid to late bloomers that are kind of no fail in the garden are false indigo. My personal favorite is African blue basil. Echinacea and Joe Pye weed will all be very good pollinators in your garden. Let's look at the foundation of feeding and fertilizing. Blueberries and strawberries are very low nitrogen feeders. Blueberries are very easily damaged by excess nitrogen, so you're going to want to be mindful and keep the nitrogen very low on your blueberries. I want to call attention to the top photo on this slide. This is a picture of heavy growth on strawberries with a low fruit yield due to too much nitrogen in this strawberry bed. It is rather counterintuitive when you look at strawberries, because strawberries should be fed very sparingly in the spring, and then they should have a second feeding after the harvest, which promotes new growth. And that's a bit counterintuitive to the way we feed most of our plants. I want to call your attention back to the blueberry column. Blueberries are a bit touchy when it comes to fertilization. In year 1 and 2, you're going to want to feed your blueberries when the leaves reach full size. In year 3 and 4, they will get their first feeding when new growth appears, so a bit earlier. And then in year 5, you're going to want to feed in the spring, sometime in the spring, and then every 6 weeks until midsummer. But again, keeping in mind that blueberries do like low nitrogen. When it comes to feeding blackberries and raspberries, let me advance this slide. When it comes to feeding blackberries and raspberries, I want to define a feeding system for you that I very much appreciate and I use often. It's called foliar feeding. Foliar feeding is a technique of feeding plants by applying liquid fertilizer to leaves, both top and bottom. I personally use a liquid fish emulsion and a kelp mixture, and I mix these 2 products at half strength. These can be applied every 2 to 4 weeks. And I especially like the fish emulsion because it is a low nitrogen product. I like foliar feeding because it makes the nutrients available to the plants very quickly. I want to call your attention to these 2 photos. The photo up in the upper right, the green pressure pump is a 1-gallon pump, and the lower left corner, the orange one, is a 1-quart pressure pump. These pressure pumps are very easy on your hands, and they're very efficient to use in the garden. You can use either size. I have both of them in the garden. And you use them based on the size of your garden or the task at hand. If I'm going to foliar feed the entire garden, I get out my 1 gallon sprayer. Those sprayers do come in 2 gallon versions, but I find it rather heavy and cumbersome to carry around. So I just use my foliar sprayer, and it takes me 2 times. I fill it 2 times and I can do my whole garden with 2 sprays. It will be very important with your berries to keep your soil balanced and your pH low. So we would highly recommend that you do a professional soil test about every 3 years and amend your soil and add your sulfur appropriately based on the results of your soil test. So now let's look at the foundation of pruning and maintenance. When we talk about pruning and maintenance, we need to define a few terms. So the first term is cultural care. Cultural care is plant care apart from pest and disease management. Cultural care comprises things like weeding, deadheading, trimming, watering, and feeding. Strawberries need consistent cultural care to remove their spent leaves and to get that heavy mat that can form under your strawberry plants to keep that cleared out. The other term we need to define is cultural pruning. Cultural pruning we do to remove dead or diseased or damaged wood. And we want to do that kind of cultural pruning as we need it. When we see a problem with a plant, we need to address it immediately. Then we have seasonal pruning, and that is pruning that we do once a year. It tends to be a heavier pruning, and it's a pruning that we do for size and shape. Strawberries have a little bit different pruning system. June-bearing strawberries bear one time in June, and then they need to be cut back completely to 1 inch above the ground. The pruning for ever-bearing strawberries is a little different. If they become kind of impacted in the bed, you can prune them, but you're never going to want to take more than 1/3 of the plant away. So you'll be careful about pruning your ever-bearing strawberries. All berries require some degree of pruning to have effective fruit set. So don't be afraid to prune and pinch back. When it comes to pruning blackberries and raspberries, you're going to need to know the difference between those primocanes. Now, those are our newborn canes. They are generally going to appear as light green canes, and they're going to be a bit more flexible. And our floricanes are our toddler canes, and they are going to be a darker color, and the stems are going to be a bit woodier. I hope that the photo is clear enough that you can see the difference between those light green canes and the dark reddish brown canes. Remember, when it comes to pruning, that there are a few varieties of blackberry and raspberry that fruit 2 times on the same cane. So you are going to want to prune after the second fruiting. All berries need correct pruning for fruit set. So again, don't be afraid to prune. Now, once a caneberry is done fruiting, it is completely done. It will not fruit again. So you're going to want to cut that cane right back to the ground. I have a tip that I use in my garden. I use a piece of string, a piece of garden tape, or a piece of bright colored yarn on the cane which is fruited, and I just put a string around the cane that fruited this year. And when it comes time to prune them back, I don't have any confusion. I simply prune the ones out that have the strings of the yarn tied around them. Let's just take a quick look at harvesting. Harvesting is measured from the day of from the first day of bloom to the day of harvest. Now, this is only a guideline, and you can see that for blueberries and blackberries, there's a huge gap. It's between 60 and 90 days from bloom to harvest. So you can see that you're going to need to know your variety and you're going to have to taste your fruit. You want to pick fruit ripe. Berries do not ripen off the plant. Berries also ripen in waves over several weeks, sometimes as many as 6 or 8 weeks. So you're going to need to pick your berries every other day. The nice thing about blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries when they're ripe is that they nearly fall off your hand. They fall off the stem right into your hand. Blueberries are especially notorious for just, you get near a blueberry and when it's ripe, it just falls off the branch. There's something interesting about blackberries and raspberries that I'd like to share with you. Blackberries and raspberries both have a core inside the berry. When a blackberry is ripe and you pick it, the core is going to stay inside the berry. But when a raspberry becomes ripe and you pick it, the core is going to stay on the cane and the berry will be hollow. You're going to gauge when to harvest your strawberries by color. They're going to be bright red and they're going to be evenly colored, both on the top and the bottom. When you harvest your strawberries, you're going to want to leave 1/4 of an inch of the stem on the berry. It's best to harvest your strawberries by cutting them off the crown of the plant. When it comes to storage, you want to store your berries absolutely completely dry. So I never wash my berries before I store them. I wash them as I go. Berries are best stored in the flattest container that they can be in. It's a good idea to put a paper towel in the bottom of that container. It will absorb any additional moisture in the container. Then you're going to cover it and you're going to put it in the refrigerator. Let's talk a little bit about pests and disease. You're going to find with your berry plants that there are very few pests and diseases. I will occasionally see aphids on my plants or possibly thrip. You can get cane borers and mites and ants sometimes. But your worst problem with your berries is going to be your critters. Deer, voles, birds, rabbits, squirrels, that sort of thing. And of these critters, birds are going to be your biggest challenge. You may need to use netting when your berries are ripening or fruiting. Very often, you can just put shea cloth over them, and that's enough to keep the birds and other critters out of your berries. My experience has been that berry plants really are very disease resistant if you space them appropriately, you give them plenty of air circulation, and you pay attention to the drainage. The one thing that you might find in the disease category is botrytis blight or septoria leaf spot. The thing that berries might be the most susceptible to, however, is root rot. And again, this is just a matter of planting in an area with good drainage and keeping consistent water without too much water. When it comes to working through pests and disease issues, you see IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management, has a very good information on strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries. But the Integrated Pest Management System for blueberries is sadly lacking. The best information that you can find on your cane berries is going to come out of the University of Oregon or the University of Washington. Well, that is going to wrap up the slide. We've taken a deep dive into our berries, so let's come up for some air. We've covered a lot of information tonight. We started with type, still hours, fruiting habits, and spacing. We moved on and we covered sun, soil, water, and feeding. We took a deep dive into pruning, harvesting, and pests and disease, but please don't be overwhelmed by the information tonight. I know that it was a lot to take in. There are really 4 essential steps that you can take to begin to set yourself up for success with growing berries. You're going to do your site selection for at least 6 hours of sun and really good drainage. You're going to get a soil test and you're going to correct your soil for balance of nutrients, and you're going to start getting the pH ready for the berry variety that you've selected. You will then move on to selecting your berries based on the chill hours for your location and make sure that that matches the chill hours of the berries that you'd like to grow. And then you're going to lay out a planting guide with adequate spacing for harvesting and maintenance. Your berries can be planted between January and May when the soil temperature reaches 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And as I said earlier, I tested my soil this morning and it was right in that 45-degree range. Um, Again, you can review this webinar on YouTube in about 3 weeks. It takes a bit of time to get it onto YouTube. I want to thank you very much for your time and attention this evening, and may your berry harvest be bountiful.